Welcome to 3D Politics, kind of live, kind of not tonight. We got a special program for you. And yes, it's the quarantine show. We're going to be going out to the studio of Tom McKay's Radio Free 3D Politics Live, and but he's actually recorded it. And why did he do a radio show? We need to start a special fund to get Tom's flip phone replaced. That Motorola Razr 3 just ain't going to cut it anymore, Tom. We need to see your mug once in a while. Anyway, so Tom's got a great show for us tonight. He's going to be talking about a number of things. Joy Hofmeister is one of his topics tonight. You're going to love that. We're going to hear from David Oldham, what's going on with him. D'Ambrosa might even check in here. We'll see what we get. And so we've got a few things going on tonight. Look, there's a lot going on. Oldham wants to talk about the age of the dictator and the snake handler, because they're both popping up and they're both accusing each other of being one or the other. But basically, preachers are getting arrested. We've got quarantines being ignored. We've got people being put at risk unnecessarily. And on top of that, did you get your government check yet? Your bailout money? No, neither did I. They say now it's going to take 3 weeks. Thank God for government, right? By the way, it took less time to get a drug approved by the FDA and patented and made available on the market than it did for the government to send us the checks they promised us in an emergency. Okay, so anyway, we've got those things going on. You enjoy Tom McCann's radio show tonight, Radio Free 3D, and you're going to see it there right on our Facebook page for 3D Politics Live. Good to see y'all. Be well. Take care of each other. You've been listening to David Van for 3D Politics Live, and now let's go to the radio studio of Tom McKay.
Stay tuned for Radio Free 3D.
And Tommy, you are on the air.
Tommy McKay here, your 3D Politics host and your host for Radio Free 3D, the special social distancing episode. I'm in the 3D Politics isolation booth, breaking all the rules. I've got the door open. So you might hear the birds and stuff because they yap when it's nice and beautiful out there. We've all been living the COVID nightmare. I'm not going to really talk about it that much. I will say that all the jokes I was making last week have come true. You got to wonder, we created a brand new society in like 10 days where now people are determined to be essential or non-essential based on a state government concept, and you're going to be free to travel or not based on whether you're essential. And so we have entered an entirely new realm where we do not control our own bodies. I'm amazed that the feminists are not going wild and not being able to my body, my choice. They prefer to bend over for the government and make sure that they stay at home. You got to ask yourself, at what point does your work become viable and essential? Is it at conception when they conceived of your job? Or is it, when you're after your third trimester on the job? When are you essential and viable? That's the question. Your job, when does it become viable? So anyway, we're the feminists as we do not control our own bodies and we let the government control us. But I've got 4 things I'm trying to get to today. The Oklahoma City Feed-O-Rama, the Joy Hofmeister Oklahoma Chainsaw Manicure, the Tyranny Vector Advance, and of course the drinking from the poison well, a simple story. Very quickly, 12 days ago, a story from the Oklahoma, Nuria Martinez Keel, headline Coronavirus in Oklahoma. How the teacher walkout gave OKC schools a blueprint for COVID-19 plans. What you're seeing right now in Oklahoma City is that Sean McDaniel has been given dictatorial control over the public schools. In fact, Chairwoman Paula Lewis read a statement on behalf of the board members there. On the 17th of this month, they had an emergency meeting where they approved Dr. McDaniel for these dictatorial powers. As she said, while we would not expect Dr. McDaniel to seek prior board approval to make decisions regarding COVID-19, this board does expect frequent communication on those decisions. So she's really laying down the law there that they got to get told what he's doing, but they're certainly not going to have him seek approval from the board. And why would they? His plan was put in place back during the 2018 teacher walkout, according to his own words. They shut down the schools for an extended period of time when they should have been, according to law, open. But the Oklahoma City schools during the teacher walkout maintained food service during the 10-day walkout. Amazing how they left the cafeteria open, even though there were no students there and no teachers there. Follow the money. So those plans have helped the district prepare for school closures, said Sean McDaniel. Now, he says, we've been working on this plan since the walkout. He's talking about the COVID-19 plan where they are also closing down the schools but leaving the cafeteria open. I wonder why they would leave the cafeteria open. Could it be that money flows in through the cafeteria door? He says, we've been working on this plan today since the walkout in 2018. So we have frameworks in place. Yes, they have frameworks in place. He says further in the story, we have been working on a framework for a long time. I know this district has well before I came, said McDaniel, who became superintendent 3 months after the walkout. So we have pieces in place, he says. Now, why would I be upset? Well, listen to this. In Oklahoma City, as of 12 days ago, anyone up to the age of 18 can receive a meal, and up to age 21 if the student is on an individualized education program. Interesting, the meal sites, though, will not check IDs or school enrollment status. So they're going to give away food to anyone age 18 and up to 21 if they are on an individualized education program, but they're not going to check to see if they are on an individualized education program because they're not going to check for IDs or school enrollment. So these poor children that are being starved by their parents but fed by the school are able to drive themselves to the school to feed their poor 21-year-old little child self. We got to take a break. We're coming right back. I'm going to finish up this story on OKC's Foodorama, but more coming up on Radio Free 3D with Tommy McKay.
Ladies and gentlemen of the listening audience, never before has a comedic event this big hit the social market. An offer so big it can only be held at 69th and Lewis. You may have wanted to pay 60, 70, 80, 90, even $100 or more. Just for the size of the giant, obnoxious party against joke warehouse sale. Jokes and gags for all occasions. More jokes than you can shake a rubber chicken at. We sell our jokes by the truckload, loaded with drinking jokes. Magic jokes, up to our buttocks and derriere jokes, wall-to-wall novelties and adult toys, real savings on fake doo-doo. What's next in line at the joke warehouse? Up and coming vomit jokes, guaranteed to gag. So come on down to the giant obnoxious party and joke warehouse sale. We're not kidding, we sell jokes.
And we're back with Radio Free 3D. Tommy McKay, your host. We were just talking about Sean McDaniel. Dr. Sean McDaniel is the Oklahoma City School Superintendent, dictatorial control. And we're going to move, soon we're going to be talking about next, actually. Joy Hofmeister is going to get the first Oklahoma Chainsaw Manicure. But to finish up the story from Oklahoma City, people are worried about teachers getting paid. Well, this story explains teacher pay is secured while schools are closed under both state law and collective bargaining agreements between teachers and the district. So teachers will not show up to teach students, and the students won't be there, and the teachers will be paid. But they're going to leave the cafeteria open because that's where the money comes from. All that money that pours into the cafeteria doesn't come in to the cafeteria by lunches served. The feds pay by pieces of paper requesting. We're going to talk a little bit more about that coming up right now on the Oklahoma Chainsaw Manicure. It's where Tommy tabulates the potentate, and I tell you what the context is. The context is what I say it is. So for the premiere episode of Oklahoma Chainsaw Manicure featuring Joy Hofmeister on our first premiere episode of this, I'm going to explain it pretty well. It sounds gory. It sounds horrible. You might think it's a Halloween bit, but it's not. I am brutally taking 18 minutes of audio and chopping it up with a course adjustment and then telling you what I think it means. I'm not going to take the time to spend all my time making sure that her context is taken into appropriate measure. It will be up to her to maintain her context, because what I found is when you do take into context the other people's area that you disagree with, they say, you took me out of context. And you can go all day long making sure that you've repeated literally what they said to try to put it into context. And you know what they'll say when you disagree? You're taking me out of context. So let's just understand and agree. They are going to say, I took it out of context, so let's just take it out of context. And that is, in fact, the Oklahoma Chainsaw Manicure concept, where context is what I say it is. And so here is the theme song for the first time on Radio Free 3D of the Oklahoma Chainsaw Manicure. We're going to do Joy Hofmeister's Nails first, and it goes like this.
Take off your latex gloves. Show me your fingers. Prepare yourself for the Oklahoma Chainsaw Manicure. You gotta get your nails done.
Oklahoma Chainsaw Manicure. Oklahoma Chainsaw Manicure.
Only on Radio Free 3D with Tommy McKay. So we're going to get right to this amazing manicure. So she was on a KFAQ, and I had my secret microphones ready to set up. So thank you, KFAQ, for broadcasting over the public airwaves the state superintendent, Joy Hofmeister. Now, this just happened on March 24th, just 6 days ago, one day before she went in front of the state Board of Education to ask to close the public schools. So within 59 seconds, less than 1 minute, the person who is in charge of teaching the children starts talking about food. And here she goes.
And we're all wrestling with the same thing. A lot of kids that are dependent on nutritional meals.
Not teaching.
They received at school, and now lots of families are being let go from positions with this effect on their various industries. So the need is really great.
So there she is within 1 minute, instead of talking about education and what the schools do to teach the children and how prepared they are to move forward in education. The first thing is, oh my gosh, we got to feed the children. I just told you they're feeding the 21-year-old children in Oklahoma City, and they're not checking IDs. So again, why the school education program in Oklahoma is competing with for-profit restaurant businesses, I do not know.
And we've spent the last week getting waivers from the U.S. Department of Agriculture to be able to deliver meals to homes on bus routes.
Now listen to that. I'm going to replay this clip. She denied Epic Charter Schools $500,000 worth of fine waiver. They needed to have $500,000 of a fine that the state was inflicting upon them due to a process issue. Epic Charter Schools was trying their best to meet the needs that the state asked for them on how to comply with their coding of payment, etc., of administration. Because of an honest mistake by Epic Charter Schools, allegedly, I would say, an honest mistake, then they asked Joy Hofmeister for a waiver. In this particular case, can we please get a waiver before we have to take a $5 million hit on what is an honest mistake? And she said, oh, no. We're not going to give Epic Charter Schools a waiver. Because, that's just no waiver available. But listen to Joy Hofmeister and what happened to her just 6 days ago, what she asked for from the feds and what she got.
And we've spent the last week getting waivers from the U.S. Department of Agriculture to be able to deliver meals to homes on bus routes or curbside pickup to keep kids physically strong. And now we're ready to turn our attention to how can we keep learning going.
Amazing how suddenly she's now able to turn her attention to teaching children. How can we keep learning going? Okay, why wasn't that your first inclination? Why weren't you worried about keeping learning going? Instead, you were focused on feeding children. This is encroaching on parental rights. And continually the schools and Joy Hofmeister suggest they paint a picture of a grim reality where children are being starved by their parents. There's already state institutions that will take your children from you if you're not feeding them. It's illegal not to feed your children. And she suggests that children are starved by parents and that they've got to have a meal delivered to them on a bus route. Listen to this.
The last week,
she gets her waivers.
From the U.S. Department of Agriculture to be able to deliver meals to homes on bus routes or curbside pickup to keep kids physically strong. And now we're ready to turn our attention to how can we keep learning going.
So she's gonna deliver food on bus routes. I thought that reading, writing, arithmetic. Remember that? Now here we go with the free and reduced lunch clip. Listen to this one. Dang it. We're out of time. We're going to come right back. We're going to mow through this amazing problem in the public schools with money going down the drain in the cafeteria. Radio Free 3D. Tommy McKay will be back right after this. Radio Free 3D, Tommy McKay, your host, once again here in the 3D Politics Isolation Booth. We've been doing the Oklahoma Chainsaw Manicure with Joy Hofmeister, our first friend on that one. Food is first, waivers she got. She's going to figure out how to keep learning going, and now we're moving on to her statement about how horrible the percentage is, how horribly high the percentage is of the children in Oklahoma that require, or at least qualify, which is the key word, reduced or free lunch. Now, most people will get upset, freaked out, and have a strong reaction to the high percentage number, but I have a different take. And of course, here we are once again, Radio Free 3D. Tommy McKay, your host, and I'm going to be doing the Oklahoma Chainsaw Manicure. Here is another clip from this statement from Joy Hofmeister.
Oklahoma has about 61% of our school children who do qualify for the National School Lunch Program for free or reduced price lunch.
Now, listen to the key words there. Qualify and national. You know, there's only two things wrong with Nazis: nationalism and socialism. The schools promote socialism. And what she's saying here is that 61% of Oklahoma students qualify. Now, qualify is a subjective term because the people who, you know, determine what the parameters are for qualification can adjust that. You remember Will Rogers said, give me a liar, a damn liar, and a statistician in that order. So the concepts here is that anybody can create a percentage. In radio, they teach you can be number one in some category. You're always literally number one in some category. So here she is suggesting that 61% of the children, according to a national scale, see, she likes the idea of nationalizing the school systems, but according to a national scale, she says that the children qualify for free and reduced lunch. Now, instead of getting upset about 61%, let's talk about why in the world. In fact, isn't it kind of cruel and unusual to draw a distinction between free and reduced lunch? I mean, you're so poor you can require a free lunch. We get that. But we're going to shave the money so tight that's like, well, you're not poor enough. We'll give you a reduced price lunch. Well, what is that? Yeah, I would suggest if you're going to offer free lunches to people who need it, if you can see that they clearly need a reduced price, why don't you just go ahead and give them the free lunch? What is this, like a market where we're bargaining to save a buck? And I mean, how much are school lunches today anyway? Like, what are they, up to $5 now? And so if you can get a free lunch for $5, that's a $5 free lunch. But one kid is poor, so he's poor, but he's not so poor. He gets a free lunch. What are you going to do? Shave $1 off of his meal? Or he's get $2? Was he buy one, get one free? What kind of free market capitalism are they slinging around in the socialist cafeteria? It's absolutely ridiculous. So the idea that they calculate in between free and reduced price is where I go off the edge. It's incredibly stupid to make that distinction if you're pretending to care about the poor. So after she suggested that we're going to keep the children healthy and strong and keep their immune systems going, even though her job is education, and we're going to ship food by mail because that's the 21st century. The Pony Express, you know, they'll deliver a pizza in 30 days or it's free. So after some fear-mongering, she goes through the concept of, first there's the food, box of food by mail. Listen to this one.
To them. And we've actually also been given the green light on a box of food for 10 days that can be shipped by mail.
Wow, the public schools with Joy Hofmeister is really on the cutting edge of educating children by sending a box of food, she calls it, to children by mail. My gosh, the Pony Express is still working for us. She goes on this same statement of box of food routine right here.
That is going to their homes as well, so that they're not walking out to bus stops waiting early in the morning or something to receive one meal at a time.
You can hear what Joy Hofmeister has said. I call her the Hof. Joy the Hofmeister is suggesting that the world she lives in is a world where parents neglect their children so badly that she's got to take care of them by using state authority to ship food by mail, because she fears that if she doesn't ship food by mail at your taxpayer expense, that the children will be walking out to the bus stop to get food from the bus driver one meal at a time every morning. I mean, what world does she live in? So then she does a little bit of fear-mongering after that statement. And she talks about how the COVID tests in Oklahoma are going up. And we haven't even done as many tests as other states. Well, in fact, how does the COVID number of positives go up? By testing. So if we do more testing, what do you think is going to happen to the number of cases? More testing equals more cases. But she scares on them. Then she does a little bit of hocus pocus about how she doesn't want to plan in a crisis. But listen to this.
And we knew that if districts were going to plan to move forward with learning.
See, why wouldn't her statement say because districts will have to move forward? She's acting like they're hesitating, waiting on some instruction from above, and her next following statement goes like this.
They needed to get this determined quickly so that they could begin that process of planning.
Translation. They were waiting on us at the higher state level, taking our cues from the feds to tell them what to do. The districts are waiting to move until they are told what to do. Here's her final statement on planning in a crisis. I like this. So we're talking about what she's done in the last week since we've had the crisis, because she wants to avoid all these things they've been doing in the last 12 days. Here's what she says why they're doing it.
And we don't want to plan and prepare in a crisis. We want to plan and prepare ahead of time.
Right, except for the fact is you were just explaining that all the stuff you were doing was because you were having to make movements during the crisis. And then you're saying, because we don't, we're making these crisis decisions because we don't want to make crisis decisions during a crisis. You're literally making decisions during the crisis. So now she's going to define distance learning. And you thought it was the internet, but no, listen to this.
We use that term because it is more open and broad. It can include not just online platforms, but it can mean that we are working in telephone, conferencing in some ways or.
So, wow, the Tulsa public schools, the Oklahoma public schools have moved all the way up to telephone conferencing. Whoa, maybe they'll get cassette recorders.
Lessons being delivered. We've seen one state that's ahead of us in this particular pandemic.
This particular pandemic, as opposed to all the other pandemics. Now, she's talking about lessons being delivered, because we're going to deliver some of them by mail. Pony Express, I'm sure, is in there. And then here's this other state that's way ahead of us, and here's what they did.
Lessons being delivered. We've seen one state that's ahead of us in this particular pandemic, and they are actually delivering lessons with the meals on bus routes.
Wow, so the bus driver will not only drive the bus, but he'll deliver the lesson and the meal. What do you need a school for if you got a bus? If you got a bus driver? Oh my goodness me, that is some amazing stuff. So now here we're more with distance learning from Joy Hofmeister during the Oklahoma Chainsaw Manicure, where the context is what I say it is, on Radio Free 3D with Tommy McKay. Goes like this.
OETA, Public Broadcasting here in Oklahoma.
She's defining what is distance learning. And most people think, oh yeah, the internet. Like epic charter schools and virtual learning over the internet. But the Oklahoma public schools are all the way up to not only telephone conferencing, delivering food and lessons by bus, but this one.
OETA, Public Broadcasting here in Oklahoma, and we're working with their office and our curriculum and instruction office. They're willing to clear some of their programming, daytime programming, and putting up some lessons
you got to ask yourself, why wouldn't they be putting up some lessons, before the crisis? Why are we planning during the crisis? Why hasn't public broadcasting been already in conjunction with, working with for the last 40 years, public schools in Oklahoma to put together a system for this type of emergency, or just to validate our expenditure on OETA otherwise? Here is more about the OETA partnership.
And programming that's grade specific, subject specific, that's already available, and then coordinating that with teachers.
So a dirty little secret that nobody knows because they're not telling you is that the people that Joy Hofmeister would not allow a waiver due to a technical difficulty in translating the money. She is gaining help on putting together these systems of distance learning from Epic Charter Schools. People from Epic Charter Schools are helping the Oklahoma State Board of Education and Joy Hofmeister put together a plan that will facilitate the distance learning. Here's more on distance learning.
So if they have a TV antenna and a TV, they are going to be able to have some structure and very specific to finishing the year with the Oklahoma academic standards. So that's another example of what we mean with distance learning.
So another example of what Joy Hofmeister means by distance learning is watching television. I mean, that's literally what she said. If you have a television antenna and a TV, you're going to have some structure. And she believes that if you didn't have a television and her commanding OETA to deliver these, messages of instruction, then the poor children, after they ate their lunch and breakfast from the bus driver, they'd run amok with no structure in their life. I mean, what will happen if the public school leaves my children in their car when they run into the Quick Trip? And she goes on to talk about what the board will allow. Now, she was online with over 200 people, 540 districts, and she's talking about what these district leaders want to do. And then she goes into they need to know what the board will allow. And that's my context, not hers. She doesn't use the word allow, but here's what she says.
They want to learn from each other. They want to also understand what the board will be entertaining tomorrow with.
Now, she's talking about, Hofmeister is talking the day before she meets with the state board to ask to close the schools. And the districts are waiting, and she says, to find out what the board will entertain, she says. And what that means is what the board will allow the districts to do, she goes on to say.
In regard to some other red tape and various laws that are in place that need to be lifted.
So what will the state Board of Education entertain or allow to lift, again, more waivers and these regulations and restrictions? Again, suddenly the restrictions are in the way of the tyrants instead of the capitalists. She goes on to say.
So we're following suit with the feds.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. What did the Oklahoma State Superintendent of Public Schools say?
So we're following suit with the feds.
So we're
following suit with the feds.
So we're following suit with the feds. So Joy Hofmeister says she's following suit with the feds. Thank you, KFAQ, for allowing her to lay out her rope on public airwaves. So the state is following the feds. That's what she just said. She goes on to say.
The U.S. Department of Education has been very swift to provide waivers from federal regulation in this time of, a national declared emergency.
Isn't it amazing how the public school in 10 or 12 days can get all these waivers from the feds, when the capitalists, even the FDA, you'll notice on the coronavirus, what's in the way of fixing the coronavirus? The FDA. The continually you hear that they have to remove restrictions from people doing things. We've got to get government restrictions out of the way. Government restrictions out of the way. We've got to get the FDA clearance sooner to do more faster. She goes on to say.
But those are some of the details that schools are thinking about. What we are wanting them to do is shift their focus to learning.
Now look at here. We're all the way to finally shifting our focus to learning. We've fed them. We've brought them television programs on PBS. We've delivered food on, Pony Express and lessons on the bus. And we're going to be right back with more 3D Politics on Radio Free 3D with Tommy McKay. I'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen of the listening audience, never before has a comedic event this big hit the Tulsa market. An offer so big it can only be held at 69th and Lewis. You may have wanted to pay 60, 70, 80, 90, even $100 more just for the size of the giant obnoxious party against Joe Warehouse sale. Jokes and for all occasions, more jokes than you chicken rubber chicken ass. We sell our jokes by the truckload, loaded with drinking jokes. Magic jokes, up to our buttocks and derriere jokes. Wall to wall, movies and adult toys. Real sayings on fake doo-doo. What's next in line at the Joke Warehouse? Up and coming vomit jokes. Guaranteed to gag, so come on down to the giant obnoxious party at Joke Warehouse sale. We're not kidding, we sell jokes.
Radio Free 3D, Tommy McKay, your host, here for the exciting conclusion of the amazing Oklahoma Chainsaw Manicure with Joy Hofmeister. She was just talking about how the board will approve or not approve certain restrictions that will be waived on behalf of the public schools trying to maintain their cafeteria. We got to make sure that lunch lady is still there, even though we don't need students and we don't need learning and we don't need teachers. We do have to have the lunch lady. So here is an amazing guarantee from the state superintendent for this, like I thought they were an independent capitalist company, but listen to what she promises.
A lot of the good best practices that we have developed, partnerships with Cox Communications is willing to go into homes and wire their home for internet for free.
So there she is, Joy Hofmeister, saying that Cox will wire your internet for free. I don't know how you get that. I guess you call Joy Hofmeister. Now, here she tries to wow us with the amazing number of how well they're doing. She's got 540 districts, and her attitude is that she's amazed how good they're doing, that 200 of those districts are amazingly online. And I'm saying, you mean only 200 out of 540? In 1995, we passed a $90 million bond issue, Tulsa Public Schools, to ready the schools for the internet, to make them all ready to go for the 21st century, etc. But here is Joy Hofmeister talking 25 years or so later.
And I think it's worth noting that out of the 540 school districts that we have, over 200 of them are already working with online learning.
You see, that is damn worthy of noting that only 200 of 540 districts are now online. What? How many years will you wait for the Pony Express to deliver your internet? How much Wi-Fi does a Pony have? I can't imagine that she's proud that less than half of the districts in Oklahoma are connected to the internet, so to speak. And of course, I'm taking it out of context. I know. Now listen to this great episode she has here.
There's another school that's a smaller school that has said they are going to have a graduation ceremony parade with everybody in their cars down Main Street, led by the law enforcement with sirens, and people are going to have a way to celebrate individual students moving through more of a mobile ceremony.
Wow, she's so humiliated, I guess, that now we're going to have, and what senior doesn't want a parade in their honor led by a local law enforcement blaring a siren? I mean, that is ridiculous. But the smaller rural communities are somehow coming up with these grand ideas that the state is learning from. Isn't it just amazing? Now, here's my favorite one of the batch right here.
The church is not the building. The church is made up of the people, and that is the church. Well, I want to carry that over to thinking about school that way. The school is not the building. The school is the people.
Yeah, the school is the people, which is why when you start complaining about funding, see, that's the whole idea of the concept behind the phrasing about the church isn't the building. That means the church isn't the funding. That means the church has nothing to do with the money. And let's agree with Joy Hofmeister to drag that over into the school concept, that the school is not the money, and the school is not more funding, and the school doesn't have anything to do with money. School has to do with loving the children and teaching the children. Let's hear that one more time from Joy Hofmeister, the Hoff, and let's learn from her.
The church is not the building.
Right.
The church is made up of the people.
It's not the money, it's the people.
That is the church.
That's the church.
I want to carry that over.
Me too.
To thinking about school that way.
Me too.
The school is not the building.
The school is not the funding.
The people.
The school is the people. It's not the funding. So let's get off this more funding idea. Just like Joy Hofmeister said, Oklahoma State Superintendent said, the school isn't about funding. See, the school is about the people. Now here's the next statement.
Learning doesn't have to stop just because we have a global pandemic.
I gotta say, that's almost comedic. Now, she said earlier that something about this particular pandemic, but now she's saying that, look, school, we don't have to stop learning. Like, who thought we weren't going to learn during a global pandemic? But I like how she both makes it important and makes it not important at the same time.
Learning doesn't have to stop just because we have a global pandemic.
Silly global pandemic. Those are just for learnings. Just for kids. Here's we're going to get on offense. And my God, I've heard some pathetic acting in my time. But listen to this.
And now we're going to shift gears to offense.
Oh, wow. Now, seriously? Just like all the other college girls, we're going to move to offense.
What does school look like now? What does that connection and learning look like now?
Well, she's waking up in a brand new world, pretending that all of a sudden it's a brand new world after this particular pandemic.
And plan and be ready. And you never know. This may be a dry run for what may come in the future.
Now that one's chilling. It's not my favorite because it's scary. She is clearly in on whatever the fix is. We're living the Cordoba virus social distancing laws right now where they're breaking up private parties with the police. And what she says here is we don't know, which means she does know. This could be a dry run for the future, which means it is a dry run for the future. And here's what she says.
And plan and be ready. And you never know. This may be a dry run for what may come in the future.
Yeah, maybe a dry run for what comes in the future. Now, for all you urban dictionary people, this is something that should disturb all of you.
Then we will have learned lessons and had.
Now, she's saying here about, look, if the pandemic thing happens and we finally get through it, we're going to learn from it, like they'll do, though. You're going to suffer, and then once you do suffer, once you suffer, we are going to learn from it. But listen to this.
Then we will have learned lessons and had maybe a pull start.
I'm sorry, did you say pull start? Look, if you're a good Christian person, don't look it up. I'm amazed that in an industry where child molestation and sexual abuse by teachers against students is at an all-time high, she uses the phrase pull start. I mean, man.
A pull start to doing school in a more modern way.
So she's like drugs. She doesn't teach school. She does school. But she's going to pull start teaching into learning in a more modern way.
A pull start to doing school in a more modern way.
Of course, that modern way, we just talked about it. It's going to be on television through OETA, and you're going to have lessons and food delivered by the bus driver. That's the modern social distancing. And when the public schools panic, who do they go to? Epic charter schools to help them provide lessons for the children for distance learning, because who's the expert in distance learning? Epic charter schools. Last one on this exciting debut of the Oklahoma Chainsaw Manicure, and we're going to play the theme song one more time because this is the debut.
And let's move them into the next grade level where appropriate.
Now, here she's talking about the third graders, who mainly in third grade, your most important thing is reading. Now, she talks about targeting areas that need help, like, you would say targeting would be in the extra side issues, but she's talking about targeting reading in third grade, which is not a side area. Targeting reading in third grade would be like targeting entirely the third grade. But she's into the cooperative advancement, not the academic advancement. That is, move a third grader into fourth grade because they've cooperated, not because they actually know the information. Here is her, Joy Hofmeister's, comment on cooperative advancement.
And let's move them into the next grade level where appropriate, but it's always best to keep advancing. We can always augment with additional support in targeted areas.
Targeted areas in third grade would be reading. And so imagine if you were a student 2 years ago during the teacher's walkout and your reading was disturbed because of the teacher walkout. Now, 2 years later in fifth grade, your whole school system in fifth grade is being jacked up by this coronavirus and the walkout again of the public schools. Now, in 2027, that graduating class is going to be low on reading skills and low on fifth grade skills. And if they do it again before they graduate, low on more skills. Beware 2027, thanks to Joy Hofmeister.
But I would try to relieve families of that fear. Particularly with our third graders that some are worried about with their reading.
Yeah, because she's saying the parents are worried that their third grader will suffer social condemnation because they're not moving to fourth grade, even though they're not worried about the child not learning how to read. Okay? One of the reasons that Joy Hofmeister has had to have waivers from the feds is because the feds found out that people were graduating all the way through public schools and not being able to read. They were getting into colleges and not having the skill of simple reading. So there was a federal law passed that says children can't pass third grade till they know how to read. But they had to strike that and get that waived so that Joy Hofmeister could move these third graders into fourth grade, even despite the federal restrictions from passing children on to the next grade.
Adjust
adjust your cup and get ready to rumble. There's a new place to party and catch all the greatest UFC fights. It's the Armbar, located at 51st Peoria. Submit to the Armbar, a full-scale assault on your senses with 6,700 big-screen TVs streaming nothing but UFC fights and videos of people getting their head kicked. You've got to beat your way in with elbows flying just to get a seat. And if you can survive drinking, it means you're one tough bastard to make it inside the Armbar at 51st and Peoria. You'll be amazed at the technology. While you're mesmerized, the waitress may give you a roundhouse kick to the throat, and you'll find yourself stumbling against the octagon. It's like slam dancing meets a full-service restaurant bar and grill. With shots so cheap, we'll give you up to full 60 seconds to recover after a blow so low. Step into our GIP room where you'll see videos that'll guarantee you get wet. Whether you're looking to party or just work out, the Armbar is the place for you. So by the time you leave, you'll realize your face has been messed up, and your wife won't be mad at you for being out drinking with the boys. She'll feel sorry for you, ass kicked. They used to say no pain, no gain, no ground, no pound. This ain't your grandma's hookah bar. Submit to the Armbar, 51st Peoria.
And Tommy, you are on the air.
Radio Free 3D with Tommy McKay, your host, here in the 3D Politics Isolation Booth. Not a David in sight, all by myself here on Social Distancing Special Episode. We've got just a very limited time before the hour is up. We've got to hurry up and finish our last two segments for the day. I have a concept about the tyranny vector advance. That is, we're going to get a tyrant, and everybody pretty well agrees with that. Everybody on the left, everybody on the right, we all fear a tyrant, and we know he's coming, and we just don't know what kind of tyrant is it going to be. Is it going to be a bad tyrant like Hitler? Or is it going to be a good tyrant like Lincoln? Now, the major two differences between Hitler and Lincoln is that Hitler was on meth and Lincoln was not on meth. And that's a big, big difference. And the other differences are, Hitler wanted to kill the Jews. So the bad Hitler-like tyrant is a guy who is a sole despot who wants to control everyone for his own behavior. And then you've got a guy like Lincoln who is he's kind of a socialist despot. He wants to control everybody for the benefit of everybody else. He's no less a tyrant. And yet he still does it for better intentions than Hitler. So there's like three steps in between Hitler and Lincoln. And the first step is your bicameral competition, your simpletons concept that, the Democrats battle the Republicans and the Republicans battle the Democrats, and the Republicans always fear that the Democrats will throw us into a national emergency and take over the country, suspend the election, and the Democrats always think it's going to be the Republicans that do that. Well, if you are into the bicameral competition as a reality, then the Republicans have flipped the trigger first with a preemptive strike, and the Republicans have decided to become our country's first all-out tyrant party. Then the more plausible concept to me is the duopoly, where both parties are in on it. They've done a really good job of helping us hate one side of the party, Democrats, because of the Hillary and the Obama and the disgusting things they've done on the left. And then they delivered us Donald Trump, who was, certainly brash and yet better than all of the swamplings. And so if you have a duopoly understanding of a tyrant vector advance, you'll understand that Donald Trump, if he is the duopoly tyrant, he's been presented to us with perfection. They would never flip the switch of being a socialist nation suddenly from having been capitalist overnight. In 1 week, on March 17th, we suddenly became socialist if we didn't have a president that was immensely popular. If you had an unpopular president and you tried to do what they're doing today, there would be unrest in the streets immediately. But the way it is now, Trump is got a huge approval rating, and they know that, and so they're flipping it over now, where everybody is going to obey, and obey well they have. So you've got the bad tyrant Hitler, you've got the bicameral competition between the Dems and the R's, and then you've got the duopoly, and then you've got the spiritual understanding of Ephesians, where we are battling entities of good and evil in the spiritual world. And if that's true, it's possible that, like Pope Leo, Trump is a good tyrant against the spirit of evil. And that is, they couldn't bring him down with everything they've tried, and so they've literally opened up a global pandemic to try to stop what is the white knight tyrant. Understand, the good guys that we love are also tyrants, just like the bad guys that we don't like, who are also tyrants. So that is my lens of a tyranny. It's the tyranny vector advance. You know you're going to get a tyrant. Everybody admits it. You're going to either get a bad tyrant, a good tyrant, a bicameral competition tyrant, a duopoly tyrant, or we are literally living a spiritual reality where Trump is up against the forces of good and evil that are unseen, but darknesses in the spiritual world. We're going to be back with our final segment, a story about populism, drinking from the poison well. We'll be right back. Drinking from the Poisoned Well, a story of populism. Once upon a time, there was a wise king who ruled over a vast city. He was feared for his might and loved for his wisdom. Now in the heart of the city, there was a well whose waters were pure and crystalline, from which the king and all the inhabitants of the city drank. But one night, when all were asleep, an enemy entered the city and poured 7 drops of strange liquid into the well. And he said that henceforth all who drink this water shall become mad. All the people drank of the water, but not the king. And the people began to say, the king is mad and has lost his reason. Look how strangely he behaves. We cannot be ruled by a madman, so he must be dethroned. The king grew very fearful, for his subjects were preparing to rise against him. So one evening, he ordered a golden goblet to be filled from the well, and he drank deeply. The next day, there was a great rejoicing among the people, for their beloved king had finally regained his reason. A story of populism, right here on Radio Free 3D.